Blake Ridder directs, writes and even has a small role in Manor of Darkness, also known as simply The Manor. And this is a 2025 haunted house / time loop movie. The film focuses on a group of 4 criminals who are wanting to rip off this particular kind of house. And their plan to do so is to pose as documentary filmmakers who the owner of this house has wanted to hire, basically. So they go there posing to be this kind of team of documentary filmmakers. But when they're there, one of the group discovers this kind of box in the basement which seemingly houses this evil entity, spirit, something like that, which sets loose this kind of chain of events which puts them in a kind of a time loop that ultimately ends them all getting killed and then restarting the loop again. But only the person who originally opened the box, this one particular woman, can actually remember the previous events. Everyone else's memories kind of go back to zero. Can she kind of convince her friends that what's going on? Can they defeat this evil entity? What is going on? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's discuss. Now, I will say on the positive column, first of all, it's good to see a movie which is outside of your standard haunted house movie. It's kind of combining 2 genres, the time loop mini genre, and if you don't know what I mean by that, I'm talking Groundhog Day, that sort of thing, and a haunted house movie, which is an interesting kind of concept. I believe there was a movie recently called Until Dawn, which I haven't actually seen, to be fair, but I believe that was also a somewhat similar concept, so it may be similar to that, but I haven't seen that film. Anyway, but I will say, nonetheless, it's still kind of a little bit more of an ambitious project than your typical kind of haunted house movie. So, plaudits for that, first and foremost. I will say the manor of in the title here is a pretty effective kind of stately home type building. Looks kind of quite impressive and makes for a kind of a good backdrop for this kind of haunting shenanigans. The movie is clearly a low budget affair, but I think they sort of do well to keep the effects somewhat subtle and kind of in background to a degree. They don't try and overextend themselves in making a movie which the effects look shabby. So there's not a huge amount of VFX, to be honest with you, but when we do see it, you know, again, I have to say, I think, again, when you consider the budget, I think the effects were relatively kind of well done. I think it's an intriguing mystery. I'm not sure it completely makes sense, I have to say. But nonetheless, it was an intriguing mystery, and it even manages to kind of like pepper in a little bit of kind of humour here and there. Some of which, I've got to say, is a little misplaced, but nonetheless, it is what it is. The movie, you know, it's not a film that kind of outstays its welcome. I think it's paced relatively kind of well, admittedly. It's not too long, the concept gets going fairly quick. Let's talk about what doesn't work, and I've kind of hinted at it already. I think the concept here, you know, you get the idea that they're in a time loop, but you don't really understand what it is they're trying to do to try and get out of it. Why it's happening, what is this thing, how did it get there, is it sentient, what's its mode? You know, there's not really any type of greater explanation about what's actually kind of going on, I have to say. You know, even the kind of the concept of how this actually came to be, because we learn that the guy who's the owner of this house, shall we say, has hired this group to be a documentary filmmaker. It's not really knowing that they are criminals, but how did he do that if he himself is stuck in a time loop, which is what, you know, he says. How has he got like an advert out there and been able to kind of get it advertised, posted, replied, all this kind of stuff? It doesn't really make any sort of sense to me. So there's kind of some logic issues here that I felt were, you know, not really ever really explored. It's just kind of like time loop, but don't worry too much about the details. The acting is a mixed bag. I have to say, some do okay. I'll give it that. But there are also maybe some people here that are on the lesser scale of quality when it comes to kind of to acting. The setup of the movie, I've got to say, is a little awkward. How this kind of group sort of gets together. We have this kind of this scene in a bar towards the beginning of the movie where they basically recruit someone to go on this job with them purely because they see him pickpocket someone, and it's like, how you've literally just seen this guy pickpocket and now you're just trusting him to kind of like rip off a you know, a house without really ever knowing them. It seems really weird. One of the kind of the main guy who is the criminal, like leader criminal, so to speak, he's got like a girlfriend that he's apparently been going out with for a couple of months. She's quite happy to go along with this kind of like this crime, no problems. The sister seems to be doing it, no problems. It just seems like what I just don't think it's particularly sort of well written, I have to be honest with you. Yeah, as I say, once we get into this kind of like this haunted house, you know, I think the VFX wise, on a technical level, I think it's done to the best that the budget's going to allow it. But I don't know if it was particularly thrilling, I have to say. You know, it's just kind of like, okay, I get the concept that they're kind of repeating the same chain of events, but I don't know if it's really that all exciting. I mean, it's fairly quickly paced, but like, I don't really feel like much happens in a way. I mean, it just kind of seems to, I mean, ironically repeat the same thing, but yeah, okay, there's not a huge amount of visual spectacle there, to be honest. As I say, some of the sense of humour is a little misplaced. I don't think it really fits. The movie could have been certainly scarier, had a bit more of an eerie atmosphere, which I think it misses. Overall, I will give it some credit for trying to do this kind of somewhat of a complex idea. I think probably how it shakes out is somewhat of a kind of middle-of-the-road movie, to be honest with you. It's somewhat of an average film, and as such, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.